Hi everybody, Heather here from HeathersHobbieHaven, and today we're going to be coloring our January watercoloring card kit of the month. And this month's kit is going to include our Whimsy Stamps Rose's Bike Ride. And I've already stamped my image on Canson 140-pound Montvale paper, watercolor paper, with Ranger Archival ink in jet black. And also I have, I got in the new Tim Holtz Distress ink palettes. These are really nice, so I've filled mine up with the Distress inks. So I filled mine up, and so I have each of the colors in there, and I've also made a little sticker for the side here that tells me what colors are in the wells. This is available on the blog. On the left-hand sidebar, it says Ink Palette Color Chart, and you can download that and put it in your ink palette, and this palette is available over at the Heather's Hobby Haven store. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start by shadowing our image all the way around with tumbled glass, and I've got my tank water brush, and I've given it a little squeeze, and I like mine to be wet enough so when I wipe it on my hand, I can feel that it's damp, but it's not leaving a big, wide, wet trail. So just feels damp when you wipe it on there. So I'm going to outline with tumbled glass. So I'm just going to take my water brush and dip it into my palette and grab a little bit of tumbled glass onto my brush. And then I'm just going to lay down a little bit. And I picked up quite a bit, so I'm going to wipe my brush off onto my paper towel so that my brush just has water on it again. And I'm going to use what I put down here and spread it out. And again, I'll have to wipe my brush off because every time I touch it, it picks up more ink. But I want it to spread out so that it doesn't leave a harsh line. It's just going to fade out into white. Okay, and I'm going to do that all the way around the girl, but I'm going to speed it up. Otherwise, it's going to take me, 10 minutes to paint the whole thing, and I don't want you to have to wait that long. But here we go. Alright, let's go up and work on her face now. And for her face, I'm going to start out with Tattered Rose. And I always lay down my brush where I want it to be darkest first. So in that case, I want it to be the darkest to be up here by her hairline. So I'm going to start there and lay down a little line of my ink. And then if you have a lot of ink on your brush, go ahead and wipe it off on your paper towel before you start moving it around. And so I'm just going to use that ink I laid down to brush out here onto her face. Same for this side. And it's just a light coating. I'm going to go back and add more to that after it dries, but while that's drying, I'm going to go down here and add some to her hand. So again, I'll grab me a little bit of my tattered rose and lay down where I want it to be darkest the most. So in that case, it's going to be the bottom of her hand and along her sleeve line. And again, I'll wipe my brush off and then use that ink to color the rest of her hand. And then again, that's just the first coat, so I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going to go up here and add more color to her face. Alright, so while that is drying, we're going to go down and I'm going to work on her dress. So I'm going to lay my first color down for my dress, which happens to be Spun Sugar. So I'm going to grab me a little bit of that. And I'm going to start with her dress. I'm going to color the whole thing. So I'm just going to lay down a light layer of my pink here. Okay, and we're going to let that first layer dry, and I'm going to go back up here to her face. And for her face, I'm going to give it a little bit of shadowing. So I'm going to take I have a little piece of laminated, my color chart, and I'm just going to take a little bit of my tea dye that I picked up on the end of my brush, and I'm going to put it up here in the top of my sheet. And I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to grab a little bit of, that's Tattered Rose, and then I'm going to grab a little dab of tea dye, and it's just a small little dot on the end of my brush, and I'm just going to mix that in with my Tattered Rose I already had down here, and I'm going to use this little puddle to add some shadows to her face and her hand. So I've just got my little dab right there on the end, and I want to add some shadows, so I want some shadows on her face to be underneath of her hair, along the side of her face. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off, and just with my water I'm going to tap along that line so it softens it. Okay, and I may give her a little shadow for her nose. Okay, and then wipe your brush off, and then just use the water in your brush to soften your line. Okay, and same for her hand. I want it to have a little shadow here where underneath and right next to her sleeve. So I'm going to grab me a little bit of my mixed paint and then just use just the water to dab it around. And that's how I mix all of my colors. I just grab some out of the palette and then mix them with a little bit of another one. So let's go add some more color to her dress. So I've got my light pink there. And so for my dress, again, I'm going to mix some color. So I'm going to grab me a dab of my Spun Sugar on my brush, and I'm going to put it up here at the top of my palette. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I'm going to go grab me just a little bit of Victorian Velvet. So I've got my little bit on the end of my brush, and I'm just going to mix that in with my Spun Sugar that I already laid down. Okay, before I use it, I'm going to wipe my brush off, and then I'm going to use that little dab there to add some shadows to my dress. So I want my dress to be shadowed right here along the bottom of her sleeve. So I'm going to add a little bit of color on there. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off in between so I can soften this line with just water. and then I'll go grab me a little bit more, and I want the back of her dress to be shadowed. I'm going to add some in there, and then again wipe my brush off and go in with just water and soften that line. And we'll go down the back of her dress. And then I'm going to get the front right here where her arm is going to be shadowing her dress from the bike. Okay, and then I'm going to let that dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to go up and add a little bit of color to her cheeks. And for her cheeks, I use some worn lipstick. So I'm going to grab just a very, very little bitty tiny bit on my brush, and I got too much, so I'm going to wipe a little bit off on my paper towel. And then I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so then I'm just going to take my little bitty bit and I'm going to tab some onto her cheek, and look how much that is. Oh, that's a bunch. And same for over here. And I'm going to wipe my brush off so I just have water. And this side I'm going to tap it a little bit with just water and pick some up and then wipe it off. And then come back with just water and soften those edges. Same for this side. I'm just going to tap it with just water and wipe it off in between tapping so I don't spread it out even more. And just continue, and then I'll let that dry. And after it dries, if I think her cheeks need to be pinker, I'll go ahead and add some more color in there. So while we're waiting for her dress to dry a little bit more, let's go add some color to her hair. So for her hair, for the first coat, I used scattered straw. So I'm going to go grab me a little bit of that. And I'm just going to lay down a light color. When you first put it on, it looks kind of green. But if you just dilute it, like I've done there, and bring some up here to the top, again, pull some off with just your water brush, it'll turn a light yellow color. And again, you always want to lay down your color where you want it to be darkest first. So I start, you know, like down here by these edges of these flowers with it really dark, and then just use the water in my brush to continue to pull that up so that it covers the rest of her hair. And just because it has water in there, it's still picking up a little bit of that paint on your brush when you wipe over the top. So you're actually moving it around some more even as you go. Okay, and I want to get down here and get this little braid. And since I don't have as far to wipe, I'm going to just put a little bit and then dab off my brush to get some of that excess ink off. And then come back with water and pick up a little bit more and continue. So it's just a light yellow on her hair. Okay, and her cheeks have dried, so I'm going to go add a couple more little dabs of my worn lipstick. Okay, we'll let that dry.